Alrighty, hello everybody. My name is Juan Pablo Blanco, and I am the president of Unbox'd, a mental health awareness organization started at UC Berkeley. Today, we are honored to partner with the Love to Share Foundation in bringing you a renowned inspirational speaker who has led workshops for some of the largest companies and is currently traveling throughout the US giving talks. Please welcome Mr. M.K. Ramanujam. So, Mr. Ramanujam, please introduce yourself and tell us a little about what you do.
All right. People call me Ram. Uh, by education, I'm in electrical engineering. I did my electrical engineering in India. And by the way, I stay in India. I travel to the US. I travel to other parts of the world. And I have been invited by Love to Share Foundation America to do some workshops and talks on intelligent living, positive thinking, and some workshops on parenting to make sure that both the parents and children are happy and are in the state of well-being. And I also do some talks for corporates on corporate wellness and also on some leadership programs. So that's what I've been doing for the past about 3 decades. And I'm very excited to partner with Unbox'd with Yuan out here.
Perfect. First and foremost, what is intelligent living? If you could speak a little bit about your mantra and how this applies to both students and people in the workforce.
All right. So when we say intelligent living, um, we have a few key points which we'd like to make, which is all just sanity measures, okay? Just a sanity check on our own perspectives and belief system. The first thing is obviously we need to start with purpose and values, as you see in the screen. Generally, there are two drivers for our efforts. We can be driven either by fear and greed to do what we need to do, or we can be driven by a grand purpose and values. And I believe strongly that unless I am clear about why I am doing what I'm doing, I don't think I can put my heart and soul into my work. And hence, I can't embrace my efforts. And I tend to be a little, if I can use the word, miserable at times when I'm doing my efforts because I'm not driven by something intrinsic like purpose and values. So we gently guide, people who attend my workshop and my education programs uh, to be clear about the why. And I generally tell them, if we are clear about the why, we can easily bear the burden of what and the how with joy and with ease. So that's my first mantra, which is we need to start with purpose and values. And then the second mantra is obviously embrace efforts, which is generally called engagement. And when we are clear about the purpose and we are clear that this is the journey I'm going to take for the purpose, I think we need to start enjoying the process itself. We need to start enjoying the journey. And whenever we find obstacles or some hindrances, instead of being enervated, I think we need to remember the purpose once again and find the energy to take us through to the final destination. And for that, we need to have a little bit of mindfulness. And certainly, I do, and I lead some mindfulness activities with people. And my special area of mindfulness exercises is to start sensing our needs and feelings at that very moment. And if we go a little deeper into it, and I hope we do it in this course of the talk, we can understand that if I'm not mindful of my needs and feelings at that moment, the mind tends to go to the default state of blaming and trying to play the victim card. And hence, it may actually enervate me and not give me the energy to go forward in the face of challenges. And so I think when we say we are mindful, are we mindful of what my need is and what my feeling is right now? And that these two wonderful sensors inside me can guide me in the path of purpose and values. Otherwise, I would be in a state of non-acceptance. And it generally expresses itself as blaming either others or at times even self-blame, blaming the system, and so on and so forth, which is not a very intelligent way of living, because for two reasons. Once we get into the blame game, our own purpose is not going to be achieved. Even if it's achieved, it's going to be achieved with tremendous pain and delay. And the second reason being, if I am in the state of blame and non-acceptance, it's going to be pretty self-injurious to my psyche. And so an intelligent way of living would be to be mindful of our needs and feelings and let our actions and acts be guided by the needs rather than by blame or by guilt or by fear or by greed, right? So that's the third block. And the fourth block is obviously the focus, attention. Generally, people say time management, but since I am pretty much closely working with corporates, they are now actually fine-tuning their time management program to include energy management of people. You see, you may have the time, but if you don't have the energy, do you think that we can really give productive results? And so they are looking at how do we manage energy. And the third important thing which we need to think about, which is going to come pretty soon in the future, is how do I manage my attention? And social media is a great thing to have, which is the reason why you and I are talking, even though we are miles apart. But then social media is, I think, it's a double-edged sword. We need to deal it with care, because it demands my attention a lot. And if I don't manage my social media presence, it can hijack my attention. I may have the time, I may have the energy, but if my attention is frittered away by, can I say, frivolous stuff in the social media, I may not truly focus on the real efforts I need to take for my journey towards success, which is fulfillment of purpose and values. So I think we need to start giving attention to attention itself. So remember this, there is this time management we need to do if you want to lead an intelligent life. And more than time management, I think we need to also focus on my energy management, understand when I have my maximum creative energy and do the best stuff which I need to do to fulfill my purpose during that time. And third is, of course, my management of my attention. How do I ensure that I don't fritter away my attention? Because I think that decides the difference between a success and maybe what we call as failure, right? And then we have this simple thing of channelizing our emotions, which is how do I synchronize the mind, and how do I get into a state of observing, which is the state of mindfulness. And I call it the intellect. I know that we use the word intellect a little different in America and in the rest of the Western countries, but the cultural tradition I come from, the word intellect means something else. It means something which observes the mind and something which can rein in the mind, which is why you see a charioteer with 5 horses and the reins out there in the picture. Can you point out to the picture, Yuan, so that people know what I'm talking about with your pointer? Somewhere in the synchronized mind and intellect, you see a chariot out there with 4 or 5 horses. So these horses actually stands for our various sensory inputs. And instead of us trying to be completely, taken for ransom or hijacked by these sensory inputs, how do I use something which observes the mind to channelize my emotions, channelize my mind, so that I stay in the course, you see? And then we talk about responsibility, which means there is always a small gap between a stimulus and my response to the stimulus. And I can use this little gap as a human to decide and understand my choices, understand my alternatives, and do it with deliberation, especially when it comes to important choices, and not just react instinctively and make the wrong choice and regret later, right? And of course, I already touched upon the intellectual cardio, which is how do I manage my time, energy, and attention? The short form of it, the acronym is T, TEA, that's the key. And how we can use the power of habits to our advantage. And how do we start making it as a small routine so that we get the power of harnessing the power of habits to our advantage. And then the deeper dive into needs and feelings. And I think it's very key. if at all I need to spend 2 minutes talking about intelligent living, I would rather focus on needs and feelings. And I think it's a key to getting the control back of our life in our own hands. And of course, there is this little anger, which seems to be a little bigger problem nowadays. Anger does have a purpose, interestingly. And I tend to sort of teach people about the purpose of anger. And then, of course, as the final, end of all that is empathy and acceptance. So these are my key mantras, which generally I focus on, depending on the need of the audience, depending on the need of the person who is being educated. I focus a little more on one mantra and possibly, just touch upon the others. And if it is a 2-3 days workshop where it's an intensive deep dive, we tend to work on each of these boxes in great detail and work out the various actions one needs to take to live more intelligently. So that's that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. You touched on some great points on building habits, on managing the social media presence, and as well as taking accountability and not necessarily going towards the blaming game. And so I'm just going to reiterate this question. How, based off of what you stated here on your mantra, what would be most applicable to a student to incorporating into their daily lives with the stresses that emerge in higher education?
Okay. I think if I need to start with one block, which is the primary block, as I said earlier, I would start with focusing on needs and feelings. Look here, I realize with my limited knowledge of interacting with students like you, that you come with great exposure. Most of you would have taken a lot of AP courses, as you call it in this land, that you would have done a lot of work, you have done a lot of deep dive, and the knowledge part of it, I think you're pretty much there, isn't it? And when you are in student life, I think the most important thing we need to really manage is our emotions. And so I would say focusing on needs and feelings is the key to give us the strength to sustain in our journey of a purposeful education and hence a career. Okay, so I think the number one step we need to take is to, whenever we feel a little disturbed, whenever we feel a little vexed in the mind, I think the mind as a default would immediately try to do some blaming, do some judging, do some labeling and the rest. And at that point of time, if we can somehow, instead of allow the mind to go out and start blaming others, if we can somehow turn it back in and get back the control. I'm saying the word control with great deliberation, because the moment you think the cause of the feeling is outside of me, the moment I pin a cause on a person or a circumstances, I am in fact telling myself I am helpless because I can't control others. I can't control circumstances. So if my feelings are caused by something which I can't control, I am actually giving in to helplessness, which is actually not the fact. And I would like to gently correct that the actual cause of our feelings is not anything out there. It is right within us, within our control. And the cause of our feeling is actually a need. If at all you want to label feelings, generally youngsters, they label it as either positive feelings and negative feelings. And when we look at positive feelings, we understand positive feelings come from a met need, when a need is met. For example, if I had worked hard and I turned in my assignments in time, and I think I did a very good quality job in my assignments, when I get an A plus, for example, as a grade, then I feel very happy. I feel very fulfilled. The reason being the need for recognition of my efforts and the recognition of my thoroughness was met. And when a need is met, generally what we get is a very positive feeling. And the reverse is also true. When we get a negative feeling, it means that something in us, which is a need, which is a vital need, is not met. And I'd like to put it in a little oversimplistic way, if it's okay by you. I would say feelings are there merely to show us something deep within us to realize or sense a deeper need. So it's a nature's way of saying to us that pay attention. There is something very important in you which is not answered. There is something important in you which is not addressed. And that important thing in us is what we call as a vital need. And the greater the need, more intense the need, greater is the feeling. If I'm mildly irritated and I mildly feel a little upset, it means the need was not that much, vital or that much, what do you call, intense. But if I have a very intense feeling uh, on a circumstance or on an event, it is merely telling us, look here, the need inside you is very intense, it's very important to you. And feelings are like a compass which gently points us within ourselves to point out to an important need within. So the moment I understand negative feelings have a role in my life for my own forward journey, and positive feelings obviously have a role in my life to energize me, egg me on in this journey, I embrace both the feelings together, and I would stop cherry picking. I would stop wishfully thinking that I wish I was always in the positive mode and I wish I never have any negative feelings and so on and so forth, which I think would actually bring in conflict within us. And the self-acceptance would be very difficult if we start cherry picking only positive feelings as something I wish to have. And if I wish away negative feelings, I am creating a divide within myself, and that can be a little problematic, isn't it? So what we generally try to teach youngsters is to embrace all the feelings as it is. Of course, we don't want to have more and more negative feelings. I'm not just advocating that we should wish for negative feelings. It's not what we are trying to do. But what we are trying to gently point out is negative feelings also have a critical role in our journey towards the purpose and values. The negative feelings are showing us that there is a need within me which needs to be addressed. And so I would equate that with some physical pain. I'm not talking about chronic pain. I'm not talking about some chronic issues of the mind, which certainly needs medical intervention, counseling, and all that. We are not trying to discount that at all. What we are trying to show here is that, for example, if I like hiking, right? And there are some lovely mountains in California, I know, hills in California. So I go on a trekking, I go on a hiking. I am very excited. As I keep walking for, say, 3 hours, though my mind wants to carry on the hiking because I think I'm not still got this real mental high in the hiking, when the body feels that the limit has almost been reached, it starts indicating to us in form of pain, isn't it? My calf muscles may start paining, my knee may start paining, my ankle may start paining. Though we don't want pain, pain is an essential part of our life because body has its intelligence to point out to us that I am actually being overstretched. I am talking to you in form of pain, and I am pulling your attention gently to this important need of yours, which is rest, which is to energize yourself, which is to stop doing what you're doing right now, because I may irreparably become damaged if you continue in your hike. So pain, though we don't like it and we don't want it, has an important role. It gently prods us to pay attention to a need, and a need at times can be rest. A need can be putting things in order. In my own experience, I used to play basketball in college, and once, because of whatever reason, my socket joint in the shoulder dislocated. Okay, and the pain was immense. It was in midst of a match. Okay, and the pain was immense. And what it was trying to tell me is something is not in order. The ball is supposed to sit in the socket, but now I am out of the socket. So stop your match, stop your game, and pay attention to me. And of course, I couldn't continue because pain was excruciating. And they took me to a nearby hospital. And believe me, when they put that socket back by physical means, the amount of relief I felt was immense. And I realized it was nature's way of telling me, stop other stuff. Pay attention to me right now. The crying need for you right now is to put things in order, which means the socket and the ball, which is out of order, needs to be put back in order. And I use the same metaphor to learn about my mind also. When my mind is in this tremendous state of, say, negative feeling, I think it's the nature's way of telling me, stop other things and pay attention. There is some critical need in you which is not met, Don't disregard it. Don't disrespect it. Don't be in the state of non-acceptance. Acknowledge the feeling, sense the feeling, and slowly trace the feeling back to its vital need, and you get your intelligence back. So I think that would be a very critical way of life, especially for students, because I know the amount of stress and I know the amount of demands of time, energy, and attention you have, not only from your academics, from your friends, from your leisure activities and all. So I think we need to start managing our energy, time, and attention, and the attention needs to be also put back on what my needs are and what my feelings are, and don't rush into blaming, don't go rush into judging, or don't go rush into you know evaluating people or circumstances. That can come later. Let us focus on the need and feeling. And the moment I have the cognizance of my need, I can really respond to a situation and not react to it.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that metaphor. And it was very important learning about how pain could be an indication of need, and it's something that we need to accept. There is a question in the chat from D. I could read it. It says, "Are you suggesting we should pay more attention to feelings/emotions such as fear in the same way we do pain?"
Yes, I guess we need to. The See, the fear and anger. Okay, they are special emotions. Let us keep them aside for the time being, because they need a different type of handling. Okay, but when it comes to all other emotions like frustration or getting a little skeptical or feeling a little nervous and stuff like that, I think we need to immediately pay attention to, I am feeling this right now, and not try to wish it away. Pay attention and calmly, without judging, without even trying to condemn it or justify it, just sense it that I am nervous. That's all. Not that I should not be nervous or I should be more energetic, etc. There is no shoulds. The moment I get into shoulds, it's going to weaken me even more. So at that point of time, I guess the mindfulness exercise is all about, I am feeling nervous. And what is the need I have, which is sponsoring this feeling? I really want to make a mark in the event which I'm going to present, or in the exam which I'm going to give, and stuff like that. See? And so the moment I calmly look at the feeling, I acknowledge the feeling, I understand the feeling, and I trace it back to the need. Personally, I found that I get back maximum energy of mine, which is originally available to me. And of course, there will be still lingering nervousness, but I can easily manage it. Rather than getting into shoulds and trying to kick myself inside me, it's a better way for me to empower me. When it comes to anger and fear, these two are a little different animals in this set of feelings. And when it comes to fear, obviously, when we are afraid, we need to get in what is called as courage. And generally, in language, they say fear and courage are opposites, right? But in real life, they coexist, right? For example, if we are, suppose, getting into an elevator, and we are a little afraid of closed spaces, and the elevator goes to the 10th floor or whatever. When we come out of the 10th floor, we tell our friend that, look here, I courageously took the lift and I traveled 10 floors. What we are actually meaning is, I had fear of closed spaces, slight fear, of course. And in spite of my fear, I was able to get into this closed space, to come to this 10th floor to meet you, which means that courage is acting in spite of fear. And courage is not trying to annul fear. Courage is, I have the fear and I acknowledge it, but I shall understand that the need for me to meet you is really vital for me. So I shall, in spite of fear, get on with my journey to meet you. And that's where courage comes in, isn't it? So I think, yes, whatever feelings we have, if we acknowledge them, if we sense them, it certainly gives us back the power to manage them. I certainly believe so.
Well, great. Yeah. So second question that I have is, for many of us, we tend to group both success and happiness together. However, success doesn't always lead to happiness and vice versa. So what have been your experiences with finding happiness beyond success?
Okay. Look here, this is how, this is the model generally people like me who grew up in India had as a philosophy of life. It was you work hard, you succeed, and then you will be happy, right? But then the current trends in positive psychology movement is challenging us to see it a little differently. It is like, can you be in your mental well-being, which means you are happy, and from happiness you work smart and hence succeed. And that makes a lot of physiological sense also, I believe, listening to all these positive psychologists. They say that when we are anxious or when we are afraid or when we are in the state of not mental pause, most of our learning centers in our brain do not work effectively as when we are in the state of calmness, as when we are in the state of poise. Okay, so obviously success comes from our exercise of these learning muscles in our brain centers. So I guess this model can actually work well if we can somehow build resilience,
Club thing.
if we can
He's like, you
if we can build optimism, and if we start working from optimism and from positivity, we have a greater chance of success, and that success leads us to greater happiness, and it will be a very virtuous loop, if I can use the word, which is opposite of vicious loop. And I think that's the way we need to actually look at life, if possible. And with all the mantras which I just showed you right here, it enhances our resilience, it enhances our positivity and our optimism, and we would have a better chance of success. Instead of using success as a cause for happiness, which is true, obviously, it's self-evident, we can also look at happiness as a driver of success and get on to this lovely positive loop of life.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone has a question at any point, they could just introduce themselves and ask the question.
Well, I really like what you said. Now I'm on the call. My grandson is in college, so I'm retired. So, but I'm still learning from this conversation. But I did want to share one thing that I found to be very helpful, and it's right in line with what you were saying. Because I used to, when I was as young as these young people on the call, I had an inferiority complex. And my husband told me at one point, he says, you need to count your successes, not your failures. And what you're saying reminds me of that. You're basically saying, be happy, and then you will succeed. And it's a loop that will repeat.
Yes, it is. When I say happy, I know the words can play little tricks, okay? I'm saying happiness in a sense of mental well-being, not the sense of, yeah, I did it today, type of an temporal feeling of happiness. And you get it. I'm sure you get it that. I just want to clarify it to make sure that it is not just an emotion which comes as a result of an achievement or attainment. I'm talking about happiness in the sense that when we follow all these mantras out here, that is a state of the mind which is poised to actually work smart and hence succeed and add to the happiness. And the beautiful point which you made is being made by the positive psychologists, and I really liked about it. What I liked about it is they say that there are 5 pillars for wellness or happiness, as we call it here. The first pillar is the positive emotions, which is optimism. They call it as P. Let's start with P. It's positive emotions. And E stands for engagement, which means I start embracing my work. I start finding satisfaction in my work. And I start completely, if I can use the word, it may be a little troublesome, but please accept it when I say that. I sort of find my work as a flow, and the work becomes effortless for me, which means I don't have the dichotomy of play and work. And the ideal situation is work is play for me, but of course, it's not an ideal world. So I will make work as much play possible, which means I understand why I'm doing it and I embrace work. Okay, that's called engagement. PE. And R stands for very strong relationships with family or with friends and so on and so forth. It adds to well-being. And M stands for meaning, which means doing something beyond my physical, emotional, and intellectual needs. When I actually volunteer for a bigger cause, which I feel very strong about, many of the causes which I volunteer for, I do that because it has some events in my life made a lasting impression in me. And when I contribute to that cause, I feel extremely happy when I do that. Though I may not get a pat, I may not get a thank you letter, or of course, I don't get paid also. So this is what is called meaning, where I tend to contribute to something beyond me, to a community or to a cause or stuff like that. That also adds to the well-being. And finally, the most famous cause of happiness, which is achievement. So they call it as a PERMA model: positive emotions, engagement, relationship, meaning, and achievement. And generally, we mistake only achievement to be the source of happiness. And I think we can challenge ourselves to explore the other four so that we can sort of enhance, if at all such a word exists, called positivity quotient in us or happiness quotient in us, so that achievement becomes easier and we can go in the journey of our purpose and values with tremendous state of well-being and poise. Isn't it? And many of the
Thank you.
corporates are encouraging volunteering hearts and all that based on this research only. Otherwise, it is not only a corporate social responsibility that they want to exhibit, they also understand when their employees volunteer for a bigger cause and when the corporates match it. So they say, if you volunteer for this cause, which may be, alleviating, poverty or helping medical needs of people, or helping children with special needs, so on and so forth, they say, I will match your hours with so much money for the non-profit, which you volunteer for. In fact, our Love to Share Foundation America also has many of the corporates matching the hours of volunteering done by our volunteers out here. The reason being, corporates have understood if you are happy people, you also are going to be productive people, and hence you are going to be successful people, and hence going to be happier people. And as you contribute in this positive way, the corporate grows along with us. It's not either me or the corporate, it is me and the corporate. And so that's how these 5 pillars of well-being very beautifully enhance this chance of success. And of course, they enhance happiness and well-being directly.
Yeah, did anyone else have any questions? If not, I will continue asking questions. So I know that we've touched a lot about regulating our minds and our mindfulness within school or work. If I could shift the attention to personal relationships, what are ways that we could build positive relationships within our personal lives? Tips, any advice that you could give?
Okay. This is what I found. When I was studying in school and college, they taught me how to think. They taught me at times what to think. They taught me how to speak. They taught me how to convince, how to negotiate. But one thing I failed to learn as a formal education system is how to listen to people. And I believe there is something called a universal empathy lack in all the people. What I mean is, suppose you ask a random person in the marketplace, do you think you understand people more, or do you think you are understood by people more? Okay. And the general answer given, I believe, is almost all of humankind thinks that I understand others more than others understanding me. So there is always a lack that I am not fully understood. And there is always a thought by most of the humans that I tend to understand others better, but others are not giving the same effort to understand me. Statistically, it is not a viable statement, because If each of us say that I try to understand others better, the average should be certainly not zero, isn't it? But then you find that people think that they are not understood as much as they seek to understand others. And this is what is generally called a universal lack of understanding people feel about themselves. And the moment we seek to understand somebody, the moment I want to really respectfully understand what your needs and feelings are, I establish a connection. And these small connections add up to strong relationships. So listening is not just giving ears to what is being said. It is giving our entire being to really respectfully understand two things which is happening to the other person. What is the other person feeling? And what is the other person needing? Now look here, I may not be in a position to actually fulfill their need. Believe me when I say that 90% of the time, the number I'm just speaking from atmosphere, 90% of the time, people don't even want solutions from me. They just want to be heard. They just want to be listened to. They just want to be understood, you see. And I think the key thing in relationships, if you want it in one word, is, or 6 letters, if you ask me, is silent listen. You see, all the 6 letters are same. If you rearrange silent, the pentagram of silent is listen, and the pentagram of listen is silent. Then you do crosswords. If the same 6 letters, you get both these wonderful values in life, which is silent and listen, you see. So when we truly listen, which means my mental voice or my inner critic or my outer critic is going to be silent, and I'm not going to jump into providing solutions to you. I'm going to respectfully listen. And what am I going to be listening for? I'm going to be listening for your need because I truly care about you. I'm going to be listening for your feelings because I truly care about you. And I'm going to respect both of it for what it is. I may not agree with your need, but I want to listen to it. I want to acknowledge it. I want to accept it, you see. And that, I think, one thing, if we know how to just listen to each other, that fundamentally is like watering the root of this tree of relationship. You can spray some chemicals on the leaves. It will have a little effect temporarily. You may try to, sprinkle some water on the fruits, but I don't think it will have any effects. The best way to nourish a tree is to water the roots. If you imagine the relationship to be a tree, then watering the roots of this relationship tree is in respectful listening, you see, and that would nourish relationships in a great way. And I think that's the key. Most of the relationships fail not because of a catastrophic event. It fails because of a day-to-day atomic non-listening events. It all adds up. And then suddenly a big wave of dissonance happens between people who are in relationship. And I think we need to take care of this little atomic habits of day-to-day listening to each other. And suppose we are not in a frame of mind to listen, we can respectfully say, give me 5 minutes, something is happening here. I would certainly come back and listen to you. If at all you need a little time and space in your heart, practically, you can very well request for just give me 5 minutes. I'll come back to you and I want to listen to you. You are very important to me. And I think that will work magic in relationships. And that way we can avoid misunderstandings. That way we can avoid the perception that this person does not understand me at all, or this person does not even seek to understand. You see, on a lighter vein, if I'm allowed, I'll just tell you a small little story, which didn't happen. There were 2 partners living together. Let me call them spouse A and spouse B, if it's okay. All right. And so it is spouse A's birthday, and spouse B forgot about it. And by the time it was about 5 o'clock in his office, in spouse B's office, that person realized that I need to buy a cake. And so it was not ordered. So spouse B runs to the nearby bakery, stands in the queue for an hour, gets a lovely baked cake and says, spouse A, happy birthday, love, and all that stuff. And rushes back home to give this wonderful cake, a token of love, a token of care and affection to spouse A. And the spouse A opens the door, spouse B comes, gives the cake, spouse A is very happy. And then Spouse B says, you know what, spouse A, I needed to stand in the queue for 1 hour to get this cake for you. And spouse A said, you could have ordered it online. And the party ends there, you see. And now this is how listening stops and our solution providing takes over and spoils the relationship. If you had listened to spouse B is saying, I have a feeling of you are very important to me, and 1 hour of waiting in this cake shop is nothing. And I want you to appreciate the fact that I took these efforts so that you would recognize that I love you. And spouse A was in the provision or providing the solution mode, because that's what we all have been trained, whether I'm an accountant or an engineer or a doctor, you're supposed to provide solution, add value. And I tell you, the greatest value add you can do to a person to start with, of course, we need to provide solution, is to listen. And how we listen is truly cut out the other noises when people talk and watch for the signal. You know, I come from an electronic background. Generally, we have what is called as noise to signal ratio. It's called filter, okay? Even if you go to a coffee shop, they do something, right? They put coffee powder in it. And when they are brewing the coffee liquid in the cup, they filter out all the unnecessary powder element of it, take only the essence of coffee down. It's called a filter, isn't it? Likewise, I think if you want relationships to work to start with, we need to have a filter. And filter just has two receivers out there. One receiver is need filter and the feeling filter. And the needs and feeling can come in form of noise. It can come in form of even tantrums. It can come in form of words which you may not like. But if you decide that I am going to make this relationship work, it's a choice. I am going to use the filters, not because I have to, because I choose to, because I want this relationship to work. If we take leadership in the relationship, it's always 100-0 to start with. You say, and so I'm going to say, I'm going to put the filters and I'm going to be empathetic to you, even though in general terms of humanity, which I don't agree, you don't deserve it right now because of your language and behavior. But I want the relationship to work, so I will put on these filters. I will listen through your noise to filter out the signal, which is the voice. And the voice of humanity is always beautiful. The voice is always need and feeling. You see, both are beautiful, precious things which humanity can boast of. But then there can be noise. The noise can be anger, noise can be skepticism, noise can be sarcasm, noise can be all the other things, which generally will affect us. The moment I focus on the noise, I react. And if I can focus on the voice, I respond. And me as a human being have the ability to respond. That's why I'm called as a responsible human being. I'm able to respond. How can I separate reaction from response? Easiest way is if I listen to the noise, if I listen to the medium of the expression of needs and feelings, at times it may not be very fine, it may not be polished, it may not be refined. If I focus on the noise, I'm going to react and dent a relationship. If I focus on the voice, I'm going to strengthen a relationship. See, in both the cases, circumstances are the same. It is a conflict. It is a very challenging situation between two people. If even one takes leadership in relationship, we can certainly build a 100-100 relationship. And all that starts with a filter. And that's intelligence. If you ask me what intelligence is, I would give one word for it. Psychologists may not agree with me. But as a practical living person, I'm telling you, if you want what intelligence is, it means putting the right filter, which means I cut off things which distracts me. I cut off things which manipulate me, and I focus on what I need to focus on. I choose my purpose. I choose my values. Of course, it will be in line with humanity. It won't be something which damages humanity. And once I have that purpose and value set, intelligence means putting on a filter of focus on what I want in life. This is the purpose. When I say what I want in life, it may sound very selfish, but what I want in life may also be health of my community. What I want in life may be actually mental well-being of many people at large. What I want in life can also be touching as many people who are afflicted to at least alleviate their suffering a little bit by a small iota. So when I say what I want, it does not just mean my physical or organic needs alone. It can also mean needs of me as a human, as an American, or as an Indian, or as an Asian, or as just a human being living in this planet, you see. And so I may want a cleaner air, you see. And so if that is my purpose, even if I get some hindrances worded in a very violent way or stuff like that, I am not going to be distracted and manipulated or by all these. I shall focus on my voices, which is need and feeling, and I will work with people to make sure my needs are met, and hence my journey towards the purpose is unhindered or unabated. So the short answer is strengthen relationships by filtering out the noise and focus on the voices of needs and feelings. Let me assure you, based on my 2 decades of working on this philosophy, that needs and feelings are always beautiful, needs and feelings are always genuine, and needs and feelings are always precious, not only for the other person, but for both of us who are in that relationship. And so if we can somehow focus on needs and feelings, we can strengthen relationships. In fact, relationships become strengthened when conflicting circumstances arise, and we know how to manage conflict. Strengthens relationship more than even no problems at all, smooth sailing may have relationship pretty much plateaued. But when we know how to manage conflicts, we can strengthen relationships.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So my question was, how important is it to recognize the stresses that we go through on a day-to-day basis rather than simply overlooking it?
Mm-hmm. I think the answer is in your question. Certainly, we need to be aware of the stressors, because look here, if we want to, I'm using it in a very non-violent way. If you want to fight an enemy, you need to know the enemy intimately, right? Otherwise, you can't even engage with the enemy. If I'm using the enemy in a very loose sense, and don't take it. So stress can be positive, stress can be negative. Generally, they give a small prefix to stress. They call it eustress and distress. For example, many times I have found that when somebody gives me an important, interesting new topic to speak, and they tell that, can you speak in 2 hours? At times I find it may be surprising that I am at my innovative best, because I have 2 hours, and that stresses me in a positive way to really think deep into the topic, which I might not do if it is spread over 2 months. And at times it brings the best out of me, and without my blood pressure rising or my adrenaline pumping and all that, I'm able to do a good job. I would call it as a eustress, which is EU. EU means good, isn't it? And distress means that which debilitates me, that which enervates me. And I think it's very important for us to be aware, not only on the stressors, which is a beautiful question you asked. I would be more aware about my reaction to the stressors, which defines them as stressors. You get what I'm saying? Am I making sense here? Stressors are by nature neutral stuff, okay? What we call as circumstance or stress or people or events in itself is pretty neutral. But my response to that event makes it a stressor. So when I say, do I need to be aware about my stressor, which is a very perfect way to put that question, I need to be aware about my response to an event or a stimulus, which makes it my stressor. And I cannot work on the circumstances much. I can still influence it, but I can fully work on my response or my reaction to those circumstances, which gives the power back to me. The moment I think, oh, that is a stressor, my God, I need to face it today, I am signing off on my imagined helplessness by blame game, which is not going to help me in the journey of purpose and values. Does it make sense?
Great. Did somebody else have a question?
Yeah, I had a question too. Okay, so I was wondering if you had like any tips on how we can like combat negativity from the outside world. My name is John, by the way.
John, This is what we do day in and day out. I'm glad you asked this question. Okay. All right. Where do we get this so-called negativity? Okay, a lot of research has been done. I've read at least 20 books on this. But the common theme is this. First of all, we as humans have a little negative bias inbuilt in our DNA for a very important reason. All right. The reason is when we are all survival of the fittest ages, when they were probably dinosaurs or maybe leopards or tigers, and we used to live in caves which had no doors or locks, we needed to be always on the watch out, which means rustling of leaves outside my cave did not signal my friend approaching me for a chat in the night. It probably signaled me that a tiger is coming close to my cave to pounce on me. Both were imagined. Both I don't know. But somehow nature built in a negative bias in this very insecure environment when we were cave people, I guess. And hence, I had this tremendous bias towards probably it's a tiger. Even if it was my friend for 5 times, deep inside, I always imagined to be a tiger and be ready with my spear to encounter it if it comes to the mouth of the cave. And that many of the anthropologists say that is the reason why you and me are sitting out here. Otherwise, we would have been as extinct as dinosaurs. Okay, but because somehow nature built in that intelligent negative bias, which was intelligent for that time and that place, we are survived. But now, that much of a negative bias is not warranted. But we carry forward that from our DNA makeup, they say. So how do I encounter or how do I deal with my negativity is, first of all, as I said, we say negative or positive based on feelings. And remember this, feelings are neither negative nor positive. They are there for a purpose, for me to pay attention to something deeper. Let me use that philosophy to embrace both so-called negative feelings and so-called positive feelings to start with, okay? And that will take care of my inner structure or inner matrix of my psyche. To actually counter the negativity of maybe something bad will happen to me type of negativity, I think the best way to do that is start recording positives. I'll tell you this because if you take social media, if you take news, if you take generally what people chatter about, I would say 3/4 of the chatter is about negative stuff which happens in the world. If you take a news item and if you take 10 headlines, I bet on any good day, we would find 8 of the 10 to do with something negative happening in the world. Because that's what sells, you see. But then over time, what happens? This mind, it samples these news items and chatters with friends, social media posts, so on and so forth. And it samples it to start convincing itself that probably 8 out of the 10 events in the world are negative events, which is not the fact, because positives are not reported. Nobody ever reports that 99.99999% of people, when they return back home, return back safe. But one accident which happened, which is one possibly in a million, I don't know the denominator there, is reported. You see, nobody ever reports that, somebody called Jack, he started from home and reached the theater intact. That won't be even news, right? So when we start listening to negativity, when we start listening to negative stuff, either through social media or news or chatter or through friends who may actually have this joy of talking negatively, we tend to contaminate our mind, if we can use that word, into believing that more things are negative than positive in this world. And which is the reason why I inherently become negative. So what is the way out? Positive psychologists say that the easiest way out is start recording positives. Because we don't do it. When I was in college, we used to be pretty crazy about a very hilarious law called Murphy's Law. I don't know how many of you have heard about it. Murphy's Law says that if anything can go wrong, it will, you see. And it has 10 books on it. And my favorite in that is, suppose your grandson is having a peanut butter sandwich, or as you call it as PBJ sandwich. And the probability of that sandwich, the jelly side of the sandwich falling on the carpet, is directly proportional to the cost of dry cleaning the carpet. The more costlier it is to dry clean the carpet, more chance that only the jelly will fall on the carpet. And you say, yes, it works. Many times when I am standing in the ground floor or the first floor to go to the 10th floor, I find that the elevator is in the 10th floor. You see, when I go to the 10th floor and someone want to come down, I find the elevator in the ground floor. And then I register the negative, and then I tell myself, always happens, you see, but it's not true. It does not happen always. We don't record positives. So the only records we retain in our heart are negatives. So it keeps on telling, and it becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that always happens that way, always happens that way. And that becomes a big problem for us, isn't it? And that is the reason why we need to record positives. And I tell you how actually it works. I work for a Detroit-based company in India. Okay, and I had an incredible finance manager, and he found a lot of negativity in the team. Okay, so he one day instituted a lovely system. He said, every Friday before you go back home from work, you need to spend 15 minutes in a special meeting. And what is this meeting about? It is about why I love working for this company, you see, whichever corporate they are working for. And the people who were naturally inclined towards negativity had no points to even say why I don't even love, is what they thought. But then he went on persisting, even if it's silence for 15 minutes, I'm going to sit silent. But next week onwards, you need to come with one point, something which happened in the week, which makes you love working for this company. Okay. And the next meeting was a little more, volunteering from the employees to talk about this happened, that happened. The next week, he said, your performance appraisal is going to be linked with the number of points you're actually going to state on things which went right this week. And now people were in mad rush to start recording positives. And within 6 months, I could see the entire team being elevated in positivity, not because a magic positive serum was injected. A simple value was inculcated, which was start recording positives. We always want to manage only the exceptions, but give due credence to things which happen right. And the beauty with recording positives is, the moment you ask the next question, which is, why did it go right? Immediately, do you see that your heart will be filled with gratitude to either a thing or a system or a person, because it was because of that person or a system or an object or whatever it is that things went right. And that gratitude is the answer to negativity, because positivity is right in front of our eyes. We don't record it, we don't acknowledge it, and we don't give due credence to positivity. So best way to reduce negativity, I would rather put it in a more positive way. The best way to enhance positivity is to start recording positives, you see, and that will do magic. And I know it works. It has worked with teams, it has worked with betweens, it has worked with infants. When I say infants, I mean elementary school boys and girls, and it has worked with corporate leaders. So it works across the spectrum of humanity. So the simplest way to start right now from today is, maybe before I go to sleep, record all the positives, at least 3 specifics, which happened the day, in this day, journal it. And whenever you feel a little negative, open the journal and read the positives, and then you get back your energy, because you understand it's not as bleak as it may appear to be. I think the answer to your question of how do I enhance positivity is, start looking for them, start recording them, and start maintaining a gratitude journal. And I bet in 48 days, you will see the difference.
Great. Thank you so much.
Remember, here also, intelligence is in filter. You see, this is what I read. I don't know if anybody is an ophthalmologist or an eye doctor out here. I believe there is a little interesting process which happens behind our eyes called reticular activation system. and that is responsible for our waking, sleep, and all that stuff, that transition from sleep to waking and all that. And I believe it is also responsible for noticing things which happens in front of my eyes. For example, this I have encountered myself. Suppose I bought a brand new car, okay? And suppose I bought a brand new Tesla, for example. Suddenly I start noticing a lot of Teslas on the road. If I intend to buy a Tesla, I suddenly find noticing a lot of Teslas on the road. It's not that the moment I got the intention to buy Teslas, people suddenly bought all the Teslas on the same day. It is because when I have an intention about Tesla, I start noticing about Tesla. You see? So intention is a filter which makes me see or notice this infinite array of inputs in front of my eyes. Can you imagine? When I look at the room, how many million dots of color are staring at my face? Can my brain process all of it? So brain uses a very intelligent system of filtering. So it filters what it wants to see, and that filtering becomes my focus. Suppose I'm seeing a very important match, maybe an NBA finals on the TV in front of me, and I have a lot of activities around me. My mind is telling, even though your eyes are seeing a lot of these inputs, how many pixels of information am I having right now? But then it is cutting off all the attention to these pixels and focusing only on the screen, because the intention of the brain is pay attention to the match, let your favorite team win. And so that intelligence is in form of filtering out other inputs of the eyes, and I see what I intend to see. You see, if I don't intend to see anything at all, I am easily distracted. I will just see what by default I am habituated to see. And use the same metaphor for the mind. When I don't deliberately start recording and noticing positives, I fall back to my default of having the negative bias and writing all the negative stuff in the stone in my heart, and allow all my positives to be written on the sand in the beach, which means I remember it for a few seconds and then it is washed away. But things which are negative, the negative interactions I have with people, my insults, my hurts, everything is chiseled on stone in my heart, you see. And so we need to slowly give, of course, I'm not saying that let's be toxically positive and all that. I think we can very well balance this extra negative bias by trying to start noting positives also. And if you ask me, should we not notice negative? I would say, don't worry. Our default mode of the mind will anyway do the job for us. We don't have to take any deliberate steps for that.
Pin, did you have a question?
Oh, I did. Hi, this is Pin. Given our daily life and our demands, we're constantly being pulled in many directions, wearing many hats. What is your advice for making sure that we recognize all of these and we're not being burnt out and we can be centered?
Yes. Can I be a little philosophical now, Pin?
Sorry?
Can I be a little philosophical now?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Okay, good. Because you used a very interesting metaphor called I wear many hats, you see, which means I take on many roles in my life. Make sense? Mm-hmm. But then as a person, I'm sorry?
We all do, right? Everybody has.
We all do. Absolutely. And so what I am trying to bring in as an Eastern philosophy is I, as a person, is distinct from all these roles. I play the roles. I won't allow the roles to play me, if it makes sense for you. You see? Which means when I'm wearing that hat, I play that role. That role is not me, but I am in that role. I would never allow a role to define me, whatever be that role. I want to be distinct from the role. I'm going to put all my energy into the role. I'm going to enjoy the role. The moment I take my hat off, I am back to whom I am as a whatever way you want to define yourself, and be ready for the next role. The whole problem comes in when we mix this person and the role, when we mix the head and the hat, when the hat starts telling yourself that I am the head too. then you get into a little problem. That's when we have all the dilemmas of choice, dilemmas of decisions, etc. The moment you are clear that these are the roles I play, I generally go to work and come back home, but I won't bring my work home here. And that's what we used as a metaphor when we were working. But now we have a new philosophy called work from home, you see. And now even the metaphor won't work right now. So I need to bring the metaphor, internalize inside, saying that my work calls are over, my role is over, and now I'm going to the next role of a mother or a father or parent or a child, and let me give my full attention to that role, right? And that has two advantages. First advantage is I understand hierarchy of roles, which means I understand what is a greater role and what is a supporting role. For example, if I have a very loving family, my professional role is a means for me to strengthen my family roles relationship. I need the money. I need my own personal actualization in my profession so that I can be a better partner, I can be a better spouse, or I can be a better parent, I can be a better child, or I can be a better person in the community, so on and so forth, other roles, you see. But the moment I allow a role to hijack my head, pun intended, what happens is I tend to get a little non-intelligent, where a supporting role suddenly hijacks my main role, which means I am working so hard for my family, and my work stress is spoiling my family relationship. Do you see the paradox out there? But the moment I understand the role and the person distinction, I wouldn't make that mistake. Does it make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have time for one more question?
For you, Yuan, I have all the time in the world.
All right, Honored, I know you had a question, so it's yours.
Thank you, Pablo. So going back to the positive thinking, so for college students, I feel like with the workload that we get, we can often forget the amount of success we've had to get to where we want. And we just suppose, for instance, we had like a really bad workload in a class or had difficulty understanding a subject. We can often have negative self-talk and start telling ourselves that we can't do this, that we are incapable. We'll start convincing ourselves that our success has meant nothing so far, and it can build to anger. And I feel like an important thing that especially college students have to remind themselves of is that they've made it really far so far, and they have to be proud of their successes while also ensuring that they work hard. And also not just for like their grade to be good, but because they actually enjoy doing it and take pleasure in the work that they do. So I feel like that's how it connects to our lives.
Absolutely. I think you phrased it perfectly. That's exactly it. It's called habituation, or I think generally we get habituated to even good stuff in our life, you see. And generally in loose terms, it's called taken for granted, you see. And that which we, strived so much to get, beyond a point of time, we start taking it for granted. And then we think that I'm not enough until I attain this or achieve that or get that grade, etc. I think we need to watch out for that very debilitating self-talk, as you rightly pointed out, and remind ourselves that I am grateful for where I am right now, and I can grow from a sense of acceptance of who I am right now, and I don't need to create a sense of a lack in me for me to grow, you see. And so that would be a very healthy growth. And I think you hit it right. And that's the way to look at it and remind ourselves that we have come a long way and we have a long way to go. And the moment I look back and say, hey, I did come a long way, that gives me a lot of energy. And remember the 5-worded mantra my spiritual mentor taught me. Whenever I am in a very difficult situation, he said, remember these 5 words, this too shall pass. And generally, when we are in type situations, it will appear as if we are going to be stuck in eternity. That don't believe that, and tell yourself, this too shall pass, you see. And
Yeah.
there are only 4 words. If you pay attention, I guess. I think I said 5, it's only 4. So this too shall pass. Remember that. That would make sure that we are not stuck in helplessness.
Yeah. Thank you, Uncle Radhi.
Thank you, Anirudh.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for this opportunity to learn more about intelligent living. If we could just get everyone to just introduce themselves one more time, and so that'd be great. Honored, if you can go first.
I'm Anirudh. I'm currently a 3rd-year student at UC Davis studying biochemical engineering.
I'm John. I'm a 3rd-year UCLA student studying political science.
Hi, I'm Shelly. I'm a incoming senior at UC Berkeley studying data science.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm an incoming sophomore at the University of San Francisco, and I'm majoring in public health.
Great. If we could have Dee introduce yourself as well as anyone else, Pin as well.
Yeah, I'm Dee Morassi, and my grandson is in a 2-year college, going to be transferring to a 4-year. So I really wanted to hear all of your young people's questions and thoughts, which are now very important to me because I want to support him in this transition. And I know the world's a lot more complex than when I went to college.
Hi, I'm Pin. I'm a QQC director in ADCD Therapeutics. I've been in the biochem industry for about 30 years, and my nephew's starting college this coming fall, so this is very interesting for me.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you guys so much for introducing yourselves. If we could all give our gratitude towards Ram for this opportunity to learn more about intelligent living, about mindfulness. It was a great opportunity to learn about this. And yeah, thank you guys so much for attending. And thank you so much, Ram, for giving us the time to learn more
Thank you.
about this.
Thank you. Thank you, Yvonne. All the very best for your very commendable effort to reach out to youngsters and, young at heart alike, to spread this sweet fragrance of happiness amongst all. All the very best, and Godspeed to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.